Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Third Perspective podcast. Thanks for joining us on our journey today. Very, very special one here for episode 26. Um, just to get the little preamble out, obviously, all the opinions expressed here are our own. But for anybody who's listening on our audio side, they're not going to notice anything different. But I think we got something special on today. What do you think?
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely, man. We got our first guest, and I'm excited to have him on today. Matt is a buddy of mine. He just did something pretty savage and epic. He rode his bike from coast to coast to Edmonton eventually and finished off there. So over 12,000 kilometers, man, for charity. And I was stoked to invite him on so we can share his story and hopefully inspire some people listening.
Yeah, and we've got Matt Devine on today. And the interesting thing is, Matt sent me a little bit of a bio because I asked him for it. He wasn't unsolicited, just sending it to me. But I was looking through it and I was reading all your stuff. And I got to say, I'm not usually impressed about stuff, but I was pretty impressed. And then I realized I am not going to be able to sum up in 2 or 3 sentences sort of the experience, the journey that you've had, your accomplishments and stuff like that. So without further ado, Matt, I'd love to hear all about you, whatever you want to tell our audience.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be your first guest. I got mad respect for Satch, and I've gotten to follow his journey. So I think we're two brothers from different mothers, as they say. But where I probably deviate from Satch is that what most people don't know about me is that I was about 5 years away from having a heart attack or a stroke. About 15 years ago. I was clinically obese. I had high blood pressure. I was a binge alcoholic, a smoker, and living a very, very high pressure life. And, I went from a young athlete to this middle age walking heart attack. And the doctors gave me the heads up saying, if you don't change, you are heading that way. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And that kind of sparked a change for me. And I started to, pursue physical fitness. And that helped. But as I say to people when I talk to them, it was like a slightly better yesterday, not a full brand new tomorrow. I felt a bit better. But then I started to realize I was suffering with some depression. I found that at the age of 40, the things that used to motivate me and propel me were no longer doing so. I wasn't pursuing the dollar anymore. My career was not as fun and exciting as it once was. And once you stop drinking, you become a lot more aware of who you are, and you become raw with yourself. And I felt the depression, and it was paralyzing me. Like I was losing friends. I was damaging relationships, and I don't know how to describe it. It's, for any man out there that, you sometimes get described as a midlife crisis. It's much worse than that. Like you're paralyzed. And I just woke up one day and I said, if I don't do something, I'm going to implode. And I don't want to talk about suicide and all that stuff, but it was suffocating me. And I turned to my wife on the couch and I said, I'm going to run from Canmore from Jasper to Canmore and try to raise money for sick kids. And the reason why I did that was simple. The psychologist I was seeing said, you need to find purpose in life now. You're at this stage where if you don't, you're in for some dark days. Because
I just
what
want to
was,
jump. Sorry, I
yeah,
just
go
want to
ahead.
jump in real quick because I think it's super important that we highlight this. You were someone that wasn't very active, and you decided to run from Canmore to Jasper. And how far is that?
It's 300 kilometers. It's not 20 or
No, but the
it's,
reason why I'm asking is because it is a significant distance, and you weren't a runner. So I
no,
think that's important to highlight. Go
no,
ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
no, that's a good point. I'd ran one marathon when I was 30 years old, and this was like 15 years later, more than that. But it just goes to show you how desperate I was. I knew physical fitness was very powerful, and we'll talk about that a bit more. It's life-changing. But what was really shocking to me was I started to run for kids. And, it was it's the fuel. And I don't want to kind of mislead people. Like, it wasn't like I started to think of these kids that were suffering with these serious diseases, and all of a sudden my life just exploded with bright light. But what I tell people is, although it's not the complete solution, it is an ingredient in the transformational process certain people must take or want to take. So for me, it was the children. It got me off the couch. I started training, and I think it was roughly 8 weeks of training, and I went and ran the 300 kilometers, and it broke me. I had no toenails left when I was done. I thought I would have to go for surgery for my ankle. But I'll tell you, a couple days after that, I was in Calgary at the Calgary Stampede. I was the CEO of a company at the time. And I was in a room full of people at one of the happiest occasions you could imagine. Bar, beer, music, bright Monday afternoon. We're not working. We're just enjoying life. And I was debilitated with depression. I phoned my wife and I said, "Where are you right now?" And she said, "I'm about a block away." And I said, "You need to come and get me." And I literally took a picture of myself outside of the bar to prove to my work that I was there. I got in the car at that point and drove home, and I resigned the next day. And that's when I decided I'd cycle across Canada for children again. 13,000 kilometers was my initial goal. I ended up being short because of the forest fires. But that in a nutshell is where I came from. I'm certainly not cured right now. I'm matter of fact, I'm having a bad day right now. Today was a bad day for me. But I think, Satch, you know this, you leverage every tool you can. And for me, fitness and purpose, helping kids, that's my purpose. That's my ingredients. And I try to make the most of it. We were just talking before we came on about social media. I hate social media. It rips my guts out every time I interact with social media. The science and the process of leveraging social media, which is a necessary evil, is gut wrenching because I'm not a 20-year-old fitness model. I'm not a young girl in a bikini. My message gets drowned out. I think a lot of us doing things like this struggle with social media because I'm not the type of guy that can stand up in front of a camera and just get 5,000 likes, you know. And sometimes I want people to hear this message because I think they need help. But today was one of those days where I was interacting with social media, and I just said, I hate this. Like I just didn't want anything more to do with it. And so I struggle, and I still struggle, but that's kind of my background, and I try to condense it. I know it was a bit long there, but that's in general where I came from.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick on the social media point. And first of all, man, I knew your story and I've known it for a while now because we have connected a couple times, more than a couple times now. And I relate to you a lot, right? And but on the social media perspective, I relate to that too. And it is hard because we feel like we're trying to do something as a collective to raise some awareness and maybe make, destigmatize some certain things and certain, our voices sometimes get drowned out. But how do you think they don't get drowned out? Well, I think when we come together as a group of people, then you're almost like in a stadium, like the Sky Dome or something, or like a big sort of amphitheater. You have 1,000 people or 100,000 people. Now those voices can make a difference. So I think this is what the benefit for us with the social media is us coming together, not as individuals. Because as an individual, man, it's super hard. Like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
But I think as a team, as a group, I think we can make some differences.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you, like, and again, yeah, I have to be careful here because I get emotional when I talk about this stuff. But if you tell an authentic story and you're real and you drop the ego, what happens is you lose a lot of potential audience because let's be honest, it's the people with the largest ego who look the best in front of the mirror who tend to grab a lot of social media attention. But if you are authentic in who you are, and you can drop the ego, then I'm just standing in front of you guys right now. And if I can impact one person, or I can help one child, or I've had a couple of people reach out to me and just say, your story is so inspiring. I'd love 1,000 of those a day. I don't get 1,000 a day. I get maybe on the whole 13,000 kilometer ride, the 100 day ride, maybe I had 20 people reach out to me and give me that message. And I suppose at the end of the day, I helped, just maybe I helped 20 people. So if I can check my ego and say that's what it is. But at the end of the day, if it's still meaningful to help 20 more people, I'll go back out and I'll do what I do. Aging sucks. It's you're fighting for relevance, and that's where ego becomes so bad. It's like, you want to be the man, you want to be that guy, but age steals that from you. You become a little slower. You start to develop wrinkles. You're not that 25-year-old fitness model anymore. So you have to be able to let go of that. And Sats, I think, you're going to do an amazing job with this. You have to let go of that and say, I really don't care in this moment what it is people think about me. I just know what I'm doing is important. It's helping people. It's helping children. And I'm not there yet. I'm still, there are days where I react negatively to, why didn't that person like it? Or these comments don't sound very positive. And I'm trying really to, if I could do what I'm planning to do without social media, I would do it. It's a necessary evil, but it's letting go of all that stuff. And for a person who has, mild depression, it's a battle, because it's a necessary evil. I don't like it, but you need it. And Satch, I know one of your heroes is Terry Fox. He's the only guy I can look to and say he did it. He did that without 1 ounce of ego. He was out there in $10 sneakers, a rented van, and a pair of shorts he bought at the Army and Navy, and he ran halfway across Canada. So, and he had no expectation around Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all these things. He did it with no fanfare. And we guys like me and you, Satch, we I try to harness that inside me, and I say, how do I become that person? And I'll know when I become that person when I'm out there doing what we do, and I just don't care anymore about the shit that's around me. I just don't care. I'm out here for the right reason. I'm not there yet, but that's where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. And it's a constant reminder for me too, because, I mean, I have an ego, and I'm just like everyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned something about the wrinkles and the 25-year-old and competing with them and this, that, and the other. And yeah, it's a challenge, right? But I think there's something that you and I have, and maybe some other people that aren't 25 have, that the 25-year-olds don't. And that's a wealth of experience and wisdom and knowledge. And we know how to apply that with the consistency of effort over a period of time, and they don't. So that's cool. They can do whatever they need to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
And we'll keep grinding every single day, trying to do the good fight, and hopefully we may change some minds. But the real thing that I'm thinking of, man, is like, yeah, those 20 people, let's say, that connected with you, but also that 100 days did something for you.
Yeah.
So it's not just those 20 people, it's 21 people, because you did something for yourself as well. And you've elevated yourself to a certain level in your own head, probably.
Yeah, man, as well as I do, and I think anybody that does the crazy stuff we do, I was on the bike for 6 to 10 hours a day in every possible condition, climbing up mountains, through forest fires, rain, cold, wind. There wasn't a good day out there. But to your point, endurance events and journeys like this strip you raw. We're going to release the mini documentary that was done when I did the ride, and there's a scene in it where I'm sitting at the side of the road, and what happened is I climbed a mountain, and as a cyclist, in your mind, you're saying, well, as long as I get to the top of the mountain, I get to go down. We call them free miles. Like, I get to coast down that hill. And as I was climbing this summit, the shoulder was becoming more narrower and narrower, and the semis were creeping past me. And I finally got to the top of the summit, and it was a hot day. I'd been climbing for 6 hours, and the shoulder completely disappeared. So I had to put the bike in the van and get driven down to where the shoulder starts again. And of course, I didn't count those kilometers. I had to stop my watch. And, you can see in the video, I'm angry at the world. I'm probably treating Nicole, my wife, not very nicely. I'm kind of like bitching and moaning. And I think, as well as I do, it kind of just breaks you down. And I believe that everybody needs to take these journeys to break themselves down. And it doesn't mean cycling 13,000 or running 300. Take the journey, find your stillness, listen to your thoughts, and try to isolate the signal. But you can't do that in the day-to-day chaos. You can't. Your kids and wife and bills to pay and all these crazy things happening. You need to take the journey and hear your thoughts. And I think that's what's so compelling about endurance sports. It breaks you down and it allows you to isolate the signal so that, to your point, Satch, you can come out on the other end of this whole thing a different person, man under construction, not completed at all, but I'm one step closer, I think. Like, here's a funny thing. I'm building Lego models in my basement right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm shocked. I got this as a Christmas gift. My wife said, I want you to try this. I'm like, yeah, whatever. This is crap. I'm going to go to the gym and work out. I've been in my basement with one light on at a hard table building this little Lego model. It's because I'm finding peace. I've been out on that journey. I pushed my body to the limit. I felt it. And I'm okay now with what comes. And I'm okay to be in this basement all by myself, building this Lego model and just being with my own thoughts and in my own mind. And I'm kind of rambling here, but I want people
No,
to
you're not. You know what
understand.
that you know what that is, though. I'll tell you exactly what that is. First, the image that came into my head when you were talking about the Legos is the warrior in the garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what it is, right? Like the warrior has to go out do the things, and then he also has to have that time to kind of decompress and relax and enjoy his time. And Legos is a phenomenal way of doing that, man. You stay in the moment. It's like art,
Yeah. We
right?
should get sponsored by them but what's really cool about it,
Hashtag Lego.
what's really cool about it is that you do that stuff with no ego, because you're doing hours. I go down there. I was down there last night for 3 hours. I wasn't posting anything on social media. I wasn't walking around trying to get likes and comments. I was down there just for myself. And I'm finding now that as I do these endurance events, as I said earlier, my compass is shifting to the right direction now. And I'm starting to get away from the ego. And to your point earlier, Satch, like, I just want good people to be promoted. And I have one more dance left in me this summer. I know you're going to do some incredible things down the road. So I just hope that at the end of the day, when I'm done and I hang up my bike or my running shoes, I've earned the stripes on my shoulder, that I can have a seat at the table to tell the story and maybe inspire a few people. And I want to be able to say I have a story to tell. And it's not all good. There's a lot of bad stuff in there. We talked about it before, Satch.
Yeah.
The smoking and the drinking and I almost ruined my marriage. I mean, it's a dark story with a good outcome, but it's a battle every day. So I want
Well, I think
to tell people.
well, I think those type of stories are the ones that need to be told, man, because it shows. I know I've always liked the story of redemption. A story of, like, you fall down, you get back up even stronger. That story of Rocky, all these stories, man. Like, all of us watch them, and why do we like them so much? Because we see
Yeah.
ourselves in those people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good feeling, man. Like, I love to see someone who was in the ditch and just kills it, man. Like, just reinvents themselves and comes back even stronger, and shows others that it's possible. And that's kind of what we're trying to do in our own way. And if people pay attention, cool. If they don't, that's fine too. Because the reality is, in the three-dimensional space, people you hang out with, talk to, they're getting inspired as well, right? So the social media is just one aspect, one sliver of the pie. It's the three-dimensional space where the real work happens, and that's
Yeah.
that's that's
Yeah.
the awesome part.
Yeah, and Matt, if I can touch base on that social media side of things, is I'm still brand new to that as well. I get most of my cues from Satch, and he yells at me in messages to do better and to spread out. And I'm sitting there looking at my phone like I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, fine, but I wanted to touch base on it because you said obviously you mentioned the number of 20 people reaching out to you during your ride. I want to let you know those are 20 people that reached out to you, but that doesn't mean that you didn't have impact on many, many more who might not have had the capacity to reach out to you. But man, every time they looked at you or every time they thought about that, it was impactful. And to that point, you might not be a 25-year-old fitness influencer. I think there's only one guy who could maybe pass for that on this panel, but it's not me. And but so yeah, okay, maybe you're not getting thousands or tens of thousands of likes and exposure and things like that. But the one thing that you have is that the people that you are impacting and the people that you're having connection with, it's quality. Whereas
Yeah.
somebody might have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of likes. It's a passing, fleeting thing that makes no difference on their life. Whereas somebody who's being impacted by you, maybe it's 1,000 people, maybe it's 2,000 people. It's really impactful. What you're doing is adding value into their lives. And I just wanted to clarify that with you, that it's not the numbers necessarily that ever happen. So yeah, I think you have a bigger impact than I think you're giving yourself credit for.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And you're 100% right, because there are a certain group of people, Satch is one of them, that just show up. You post something about a bad day, a good day, and there's always that core group of people that followed my journey, that were there with me. There was a couple of people who asked about me if I didn't post during the ride because they thought maybe something happened. So you're spot on. There's a lot of really great quality people that I've connected with, and I think if you look at it through the lens that you just described, you're far better off than just looking at the raw numbers. So it's a very good point. And at the end of the day, I believe that happiness isn't something given to you. You have to earn it. And for me, like, I describe people as this 50% melancholy, 50% happy. Pick a day, I may be happy. Pick a day, I may be sad. But no one's going to come along and say, here's your dose of happiness. Take it. You have to go out and earn it. You have to figure out how to make yourself happy. You have to change your circumstances. And I'm a big proponent in transformation. No one is going to take your hand and walk you across the rainbow bridge and say, there you go. You're in the perfect place now. Your life has changed. You should be happy now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not only do you have to fight for it, you have to course correct as you go, because trust me, what you're feeling today is going to change tomorrow. One bad phone call from a doctor and all this shit you were thinking about 20 minutes ago goes out the window. But it's up to us. And I think folks like me and Satch, we just show people that, you got to get out of bed. You got to fight through the gray, and you've got to use every tool in your arsenal, whether that's social media, friends, etc. But get up and get at it, and be your own advocate, man. Like, no, no one's going to solve this complex equation called life for you. And I'm a big proponent of not doing drugs when it comes to things like depression and all, and the metabolic stuff. Take your own health in your own hands and cut out the people that don't matter. Focus on the people that do, and take the journey. Like, I applaud guys like Satch, because it's really easy to break people like us down and say, well, you're doing it for this reason, or, you're not that 25-year-old fitness model. But hey, you know what? We woke up one day and we decided we're going to do something. And if we can help some people along the way, embrace those people, like, promote those people. They're just fighting their own fight. They're looking for their own happiness. And I just want to spell that out to people that, we're trying to change the world one bite at a time. And
Yeah,
that's
I think the benefit that you guys like you and Satch specifically have is that it's not necessarily the accomplishments, which are many, but it's the fact that you show people the potential that they could be. You're not saying be me. You're saying be you, but be what I am in your version of that. And you're showing them the potential that they could be. And I think that is infinitely more powerful than, hey, look at me, look what I accomplished, do these 3 steps and you can be like me. You're saying, hey, you know what? I didn't think I was good enough. It wasn't until I turned to my wife and said, hey, I'm just going to run 300 kilometers. You know what I mean? Like it's the potential that I think is intoxicating to people. And that idea that maybe I can, right? And that's that hope that people all of a sudden realize that's been long since lost. I think that's the value, honestly, that I'm
Hmm.
seeing.
And I think
yeah,
another thing to consider, and you were saying this earlier, Matt, you got to take everything into your own hands. What's that saying or meme? We hear it on social media. No one's coming to save you,
Yeah.
right?
no,
And it's so true. Until you take ownership of your own life and start doing the things that you need to do to move forward, no one's going to do that for you. No one's going
no.
to ride those 12,000, 13,000 kilometers. No one's going to run those kilometers for you. All these things, you got to do that, right? Number one. And I think that's a really important thing to consider. And also the other thing to consider, I think, look, we're talking about physical activity, and that just might be in our wheelhouse. That's the thing that we gravitate to, you and I, Matt. Let's say, for example. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the individual or the people that are listening to this have to focus on. Whatever your gift or you're passionate about, go all in on that thing, and you'll find a solution through that. So for me, it was like fitness. Okay, that's what I gravitate to. That's what I'm naturally inclined to do, because I enjoy it, right? So if I'm going all in there, then through that process, I'm enjoying the process, but then I'm getting to connect with other people who are enjoying me enjoying the process, and it ends up being a fun thing. So I don't want people to get it twisted, right? We're not talking, hey, you got to do this, that, and the other, and all fitness related. No, listen, if you're an artist, man, spend all day figuring out how you want to do your art, or if
Yeah,
you're whatever it is, do that
Use
thing.
it as a vessel. Use it as a vessel
100,
to accomplish something. We're talking about
100%.
physical fitness with you guys, but
yeah,
Yeah,
and
no, absolutely.
Corey, you said something that is of the utmost important for people to understand. So I'm not going to say anything about Satch. I wouldn't look at Satch and then immediately think runner. I mean,
mm,
I would think strength athlete,
yeah,
the
yeah.
bodybuilder. And I'm sure that if anybody looked at me, they wouldn't look at me and say he's a runner or he's a cyclist.
Yeah.
What I will say to people is that there's this little thing inside every one of us called this human spirit. And it's just a matter of tapping into it. And I tell people, don't think because you found your purpose. Purpose is fuel. It's one of the ingredients. But if you find a purpose, say it's helping sick kids, I can guarantee you on your worst day running, or on your worst day riding, or on your worst day just getting up and living your life, that purpose isn't going to be your fix. The only thing that's going to fix you on that day is your ability to get out of bed, put your shoes on, and get out the front door. And sick kids, paying bills, getting yourself educated, they're all great things to feel change, but they're not always going to be the solution day to day, because some days just suck. And the nice thing about endurance sports is it is a way of experiencing that suck. On day 50, when I had 7,500 kilometers to go and I knew I was heading towards the mountains and forest fires, yes, the kids were in the back of my mind. But believe me, I bitched and moaned every step towards the bike every day. What finally got my leg onto the bike and started pedaling was a switch that said, I have to do it. That's that. That's that human spirit, the potential that's in us all. Turn the switch on and just be prepared for the suck. But if you tap into that, it's extremely powerful. There wasn't a day on the ride where I could say I was happy. And I think, Satch, day 19 or 18 for you, I can tell you right now, there's nothing joyous about it. I don't love cycling. The views were obscured by smoke, but something got me on the bike and I cycled. So again, tap into the human spirit. It's within everybody. We're so ordinary. I am such an ordinary person, but something in my mind said, I'm out here now and I'm going to finish this. And I think that's the important message here, that I spoke to a guy who wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what's really interesting about your story, Matt? And I said, no, what's that, Alex? He said, you cycled 12,500 kilometers and you're not even a cyclist. Because I'm not, compared to him. I'm not a cyclist. I'd never cycled more than 120 kilometers one day. On day one of the event, I cycled 240. That's not skill. That's the human spirit. That's the switch that goes on and says, we're going to do it. Today's the day. We're going to start 100 days of cycling. Satch, from your perspective, you probably felt it the same way.
Well, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, man. I think, you know, the human spirit, you can call it discipline, you can call it drive, you can call it whatever you want to call the thing that's pushing you to that next level, so to speak. Now, you can refine that over a period of time to where it becomes so routine that it's not even a thing. And I'm not there yet, but I suspect over the next little while, I may get there. But having said that, I think everyone does have it. And I've said it before. Look, any one of us can be Olympic athletes. We can. It just takes about 10 to 15 years to do it. And if we had the opportunities at the time that we were able to, you know, let's say at 12, 10, 11, 13 years old, it's no difference, man. Like if you cycle for 10 years all in, trying to figure out how to do it better every single day, like performance wise, you'll be a savage. So if you're cycling for a year or 2 years and you can still be a savage, and you can short that timeline down. So for example, like for us, we just started these things, right? But I suspect, at least for me, I was all in for 2 years. Every single day, I've eat, sleep, breathe, training, how to do it better, all the things. So I've shortened that time down from 10 years, maybe in 4 more years, I might be a savage, right? Or my definition of what a savage is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important piece for people to remember. Look, when you start something, you may not be amazing at it, but stick to the thing, whatever that you're doing. Try to do it better every single day and do it the best of your abilities every single day, and you will get to where you need to go in 10 years. Let's not think of it in a 1 year plan or 2 years. It's 10 years. So for me, that's where I've removed a lot of the stress and the pressure for me. I'm on a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
I'm only executed against 2. So I'm happy with my progress as of 2 years. In another 8, where are we? And that gets me excited. That gets me passionate. So that's where that juice starts coming in, the fuel.
I want to point something out here. For me, when I think savage, I think Satch. For when Satch thinks savage, he thinks Godzilla. So, you know, your levels of savage out there. I just wanted to throw that out there.
But that's the important thing. We got to find those levels and start, like, that's the important thing, man. Like, I didn't know that there were levels to any of these things until we start realizing and opening up our mind to these levels. And once we start opening our minds to these levels, then we're in the game, man. Then we can start playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, I'd love to touch base on something that you were talking about with the human spirit there. And I know Satch had some really good points there, but the tapping inside of things, how I think that in your journey and a lot of the stuff that you were talking about earlier, and the alcohol, you know, and the depression, and quitting your job as the CEO and all the rest of it, I think that day by day we tap out from that human spirit. So we disconnect from it, and we don't realize it because it's drip by drip by drip by drip. Before all of a sudden we realize we're an empty bucket, you know, to use a euphemism, right? I think that what you're saying, by tapping back into that human spirit, by having that, not a goal, but having a purpose, is very, very powerful. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's not about January 1st, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to do all this stuff, and then immediately fail at it because I'm still an empty bucket January 2nd. But it's about utilizing whatever it is that your passion is, whether or not it's Lego, whether or not it's running, you know, whether or not it's being Godzilla, and utilizing that to tap back into that human spirit and get reacquainted with it in order to start using that day by day to grow stronger, to then start accomplishing some of those savage goals that maybe you've forgotten about or didn't even know you needed to do.
And I
Yeah.
just want to jump in real quick because this quote came into my mind, talking basically outlining what you just are talking about, Corey. And it's don't mind me, I'm going to look at my laptop to read it because I don't have it memorized perfectly. But it's a
Sure, we'll
Henry
allow it.
David, yeah, it's a Henry David Thoreau quote. And most men lead lives of quiet desperation, right? And that's kind of what most people are doing every single day because they're not fulfilling their true potential. And they're just going through the motions of life, waiting to die, really.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that quiet desperation is, at least from my perspective.
I called it silently suffering when I
Mm.
started to talk to the counselor. But Corey, you said something that's very important. Life takes it out of you. It just does. There's a, if you think about the dynamics of life, the process is a bit mixed up because at the hardest point in your life, when you've been through the grinder, you become more fragile with age.
Yeah.
Your mind, your body, but yet you're suffering with all that life has given you. There's a lot of happiness, but there's also a lot of challenges and trials that you go through. So I was a happy 20-year-old. I was a happy 25-year-old. But by the time I hit 40, I knew something was happening. And you're absolutely right that life just wants to take it out of you. We're batteries and it's a one-way flow, right? It's draining our batteries, our souls. And the problem is that there's very few people like guys like Satch out there that can just do this stuff. And people go to the internet and they see these characters in Instagram and they go, well, that guy is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And he just tells me to put my shoes on and get up out of my bed, you lazy bastard, and do it. And you better get tough. And it's hard. Very few people have that Navy SEAL mindset where they can lock it in and just do it. I like to think of myself as the average Joe. Like, I'm so average. I hope to inspire the single mother whose child is sick. Because there aren't a lot of people out there that can look at a guy like Satch or some famous guys like David Coggins and go, that's it. That's the solution. Because these guys are extreme, man. Like, what they do is beyond, as to Satch's point, the level of even my ability. Like, when I read David Coggins' book, I'm like, the guy ran that these ultra marathons and he crushed them. These aren't normal traits. These are things that, not only, to Satch's point, you need to train for, and it takes a long time to get there, but you have to have something internal that is really, really, that makes you different. I think that for us, average folks, I call myself an average person, it is that human spirit. It's what we all have access to. Some people, like Satch said, can squeeze more juice out of it. But I'm not a David Coggins. Like, these guys are crazy. I'm so ordinary. And that's what I want people to know. It's that, we will all silently suffer if we don't fight for ourselves and accept the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm going to get on my bike today and ride.
Now,
Yeah.
I want to touch base on that. Sorry to interrupt there, Satch.
No. Good.
Because it's a super interesting point. As you said, you're not David Goggins, right? And you're the everyday guy. And there was a point, and I made a little star in my notebook here, where you said that, you were sitting on the couch and you turned to your wife and you said, I'm going to do this. Now, as an average guy who's not crushing it and, Godzilla taking over Tokyo, what made you all of a sudden turn and decide that was going to be the way you were going to express yourself, or that was the way you were going to accomplish something?
Yeah, this is an embarrassing story to tell. It was relevance. I felt I was sliding into a pit of anonymity. I was losing myself. Who cares about Matt Devine? I'd lost my swagger. If I'm totally truthful with everybody, the reason why I ran that 300 kilometers was to make myself relevant again. The total wrong reason to do anything. Because guess what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares that I ran 300 kilometers. The only people that cared are within a very tight circle. To your point, the 20 people that I might have touched and the kids I helped. So I tell people who are about to take these crazy journeys, don't do it for anything outside of yourself, because nobody cares. Terry Fox did it. Terry Fox changed the way we think of endurance athletes, but now there are so many people doing these things, it's hard to make yourself relevant by doing them. But if you do them for the right reasons and you speak with an authentic, truthful kind of story, I think you can make, to Satch's point, a big impact. But if you're just going to go running across Canada or riding across Canada, it's really difficult. And for me, I wanted to be relevant again. It took me 5 days into the run. Nobody cared. And I'll tell you something even worse on the ride. I was out there for 100 days in some of the most northern parts of Canada. Mm-hmm. And I felt nobody cared. I come back to sometimes we didn't even have internet connection, but I'd come back to my motel, and I'd look at social media. It was crickets. Nobody cared. It was at that point where the switch flipped. I don't do this anymore now because of that stuff. You can't. If you do, it'll beat the crap out of you. So what's getting me off the couch now is different from the first time. The first time, truthfully speaking, it was I just wanted to be relevant again. In the spotlight, if you want to take it to the extent. I wanted to be important. I wanted to be recognized. It's embarrassing to admit. What this journey has taught me and the bike ride has taught me, now if I go back out on the road or if I go to my basement and start training, I have to use social media to raise donations, but I do not really care anymore that this stuff is going to make me relevant. It's just not. And that's the truth. It's a very
I think
sad
you bring
statement.
up a very interesting point there. You bring up the idea of relevance, but I think you're putting it out to, I want to be relevant to other people. But I want to ask you the question, was the importance that you wanted to be relevant to you again?
My ego, if you want to know the honest truth, my ego was diminishing with age. I felt like I was losing the Matt Devine. I was a kickboxer when I was younger. I was a hockey player. I was all these things. I went to university. I was a party guy, had a ton of friends, popularity. My career was all about socializing, making money, traveling. And then at the age of 40, Satch made that point about knowledge. Well, there's a curve. There's two curves in life. One is called, that dynamic knowledge. It's the knowledge that makes these kids develop products on the .com market, and they just blow up. Crystallized knowledge is what we have as we get older. Mm-hmm. I was starting to make the jump from one curve to the next, and I was doing it really badly. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to let go of this guy who had swagger, who was popular, he was fit. His knees were still healthy. I didn't know how to let go of that guy. And I was scratching at a surface, and I was sliding down that surface. And I said, I'm going to run 300 kilometers. That's the solution for my depression. And it's not. It'll actually make you more depressed, because the reality of it is, and I spoke to my sponsor, we were talking about donations one night. This is a true story. I was in Williams Lake. It was a miserable day, a long 10-hour ride. I got to the hotel room. Every night I say to Nicole, what's the donations at? And the number hadn't changed. Mm. I was emotional. I was upset. I phoned up the sponsor, and I phoned up the production company. I said, guys, we got to come up with something here. I'm 50 days into this ride, and we're not making if I can swear, a fucking difference here. Got on the phone with the sponsor, really knowledgeable guy. He's always said to me, he goes, nobody cares, Matt. Nobody cares. So you got to get it out of your head that because you're out there in the middle of nowhere riding, if you think that's going to turn people over and donate money, we got to rethink it. And he says, there's too much of that out there. You're competing with all these different people, all these different stories, all these good looking people. He said, so get it out of your mind. You're out there for the kids, and we have to switch the focus away from you to the kids. And we started to talk more about the kids. He produced a video that was released. We had some matching sponsors step up to put some donations together. But that's the reality of it. I'll tell you right now, if you're out there and you're doing something like this, the thing that I most admire about these extreme endurance people that go out and do these things is their ability to be anonymous, because you are giving away so much of yourself, and you're doing it and you're accepting a big chunk of anonymity, because there's very few people out there that you can point to, and their product is being the endurance athlete. Guys like David Coggins and stuff like that. But guys like Satch and me, yeah, we have a certain level of recognition we're recognized in a certain part of the social media space.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what we do, or what I do, I've accepted the fact that it's not going to make me a social media all-star. It just won't. And that's what I respect about people that do this stuff. It's if you're doing it for the right reason and not because you're trying to gain likes and followers, that to me puts you in a different stratosphere as a human being, to be honest. It really does. That's the Terry Fox right there. That is Terry Fox.
Yeah, I think all of what you said there is true, and it makes a lot of sense. I think let's use David Goggins for example, right? So everybody knows who that guy is now, right? And he's been, doing his thing, like 10 million on Instagram or whatever it is, and speaking $250,000 a speaking gig, and
He
things
follows
like
no
that.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's been doing it. Guess how long he's been doing it for? 15
Yeah.
years. So
And he's
he
good at what he
started.
does.
Yeah. So this is my point, though, right? So no one knew who he was 5 years ago, but he was grinding every single day like you and I, without anyone paying attention for
Exactly.
years.
Yeah.
For years. So if you're going into something with true authenticity, true passion, and true conviction, all that other stuff doesn't matter, because you're doing what you want to do. You're getting after it every day. And if something happens with social media or externally in 5 or 10 years, that's cool. If it doesn't, that's cool too, because I'm already doing what I want to do. But the point I'd like to just highlight is, like, no one knew who David. I saw David Goggins on Joe Rogan's podcast when he was first on it 5 years ago, whatever it was. He was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, divorced multiple times.
Yeah. Shitty upbringing.
So I mean, the point is, like, you just keep grinding, keep doing what you need to do, stay passionate to what you want, and the outcomes that you wish for or desire for will likely happen. That if that's social media or whatever, that's fine. But the real outcome should be me being a better person, me doing the things that I need to do to help others around me, and whatever happens out of that happens out of that. And with that mindset, for me, I'm not as affected by the social media as much, thinking of it that way. If I was really involved in thinking I need to get more followers, I need to do this, I need to do that, man, it would be really hard, because this is a slow drip, man. You're not going to get a
Yeah.
million followers tomorrow, right? And people are going to chirp you and say whatever. As long as you're doing things with a clean and righteous heart, I think everything else falls into place eventually.
Yeah. And I want to say, I read David Coggins' book, and he's inspirational. And he is, like I said, he's a 1%er. I mean, we all have David Coggins like capabilities in us, but he's even one notch up, because he's got a thing that switches off pain. That's that's something
Well,
not everybody
I
has.
think it takes. I think so. I might venture out here on a I don't know what's the term, a bridge or a branch. I don't
A
know.
limb.
I'm going to venture out on a limb here. There we go. And I think it takes time to develop that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
yeah,
Navy SEALs training doesn't hurt. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's what they go through. And I will also say that I have no problem with anybody finding an audience on social media. If you can do it, that is fantastic.
hmm
what I want to say, and some people are just better at it. They look better. They're more, they have a wider appeal to the audience than a guy like me. But what I want to point out for myself is that I started off on the other side. I wanted to be Mr. Popular. I wanted the likes. I wanted to be relevant. I wanted to have people walk up to me in the gym and go, yeah, you're the guy that did that, right? That's who I was. And that, what I'm trying to tell people is that that's the wrong set of tools to start the journey with. Learn from someone who's been through 2 of these events now. I like Satch's idea. Earn it through time and effort. Be persistent. Speak and make sure your actions and words align. I've learned all that through these 2 journeys, but that wasn't me at first. I was corrupt. I was like, I'm just going to do this because I want to be popular, and it's going to get me out there. It's going to reinvent me. Now I know. Now I'm doing it. This next event is going to be spotlight off on me. I want to inspire people. I want to fix people that like me, who are silently suffering, and I want to help some kids again. So I learned a lot in these first 2 events, and I think guys like us talking about it, I feel comfortable saying to you, yeah, I had a massive ego.
Yeah.
I was doing it for the wrong
But
reasons.
that's why. I think that's the awesome part, that we are talking about it that way. That you are saying this, man. Because I mean, look, I was like that too, man. I'm no different.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was bodybuilding. What is bodybuilding? Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Right? You know what I mean? So I had to do something similar to you to kind of deviate or separate myself from that sort of mindset. And and I think maybe a lot of people do think that way, man. And I think they do.
Yeah.
Because to get up and do something that you did in the condition that you did it, you kind of have to think that way a bit. Otherwise, how do you get up and do it?
Yeah,
Now,
you got to be cocky. You got to be a bit arrogant in a sense that, it's a big F you to anybody who's going to stand in my way. And you have to have a bit of swagger, because you have to get people to give you money to rent a van, and if you don't have that swagger, no one's going to,
yeah.
So it's a little of both. The only thing I would say is that for myself is ego is the enemy. If you're into stoicism, ego is the enemy. And I think I still fight daily. My wife's taking a photo of me. I'm like, how does that look? Should I turn this way? Like this is just very honest talk. When I've completed my mission, I'm going to be really cool with just getting a hug from one of those kids that I help. I'll tell you, the most impactful moment was the little boy who hugged me in Montreal, no legs, Down syndrome, on a little hand bike that was supplied through a similar service for the one that I was riding for. You can ride too. And that's when I kind of know, like, it's hard to explain to people, but it didn't matter what I looked like in that moment. I got down on my broken up ass knees and my sore hip, and I hugged this little kid, and he looked up at me and said, I love you. And I thought, who gives 2 flying fucks about how many likes I have today? Like, that made it. And that picture, and I still have it, is the most impactful moment of that ride. And I just want more of that in me for the next time I go out. That's the person. That photo represented the person I want to be. And I fight every day to find that person. And man, it's a battle, because the world is designed not to like people like that. Like humble, no ego, like you will fall behind the crowd. It's really tough. It's that right mixture, Satch, to your point of having the toughness, having a little bit of swagger, but being that compassionate person.
Now, Matt, if I can interject here, I love what you're saying here. I wanted to touch base on something, though. You had earlier mentioned course corrections, being true to yourself. Do you think, and I want to talk to Satch, because he's obviously had a very similar journey, and get his insight in on this as well. But do you think through your 2 events, as you're calling them, that there was a stripping away of that ego? It started off with an ego, but as you were running, you said you got in, and all of a sudden you realized, I don't care. And
Man, that is,
there was a course correction there, right? And that
yeah,
stripping away. And I think, like I said, I'd love to hear Satch's idea on this. But what is that? What happened?
it's such a good question because my wife is sitting off camera here about 20 feet, and this is a true story. A lot of people said, "What's next?" Well, I had all these ideas. I won't even tell you what one of them was, but one of the sponsors wanted me to climb 3 mountains and the 3 highest mountains in Canada. I'm like, I can't do that, but it was like all these things were being thrown at me, and I'm like, I turned to Nicole and I said, you know what, I'm okay just to walk away now. I'm done with everything. I was going to delete my Instagram account, my Facebook account. I was going to go build a Lego model as an example. I was just going to go back to my gym. I was going to go there 3 times a week with my buddy, and we were just going to get extremely fit. And I didn't want. It took me a long time to walk into my own gym because I didn't want anybody asking me questions about the ride. I was done. I didn't need it anymore. The thing that changed in me since the ride completed was the realization that what a waste if I don't talk a little bit about it, if I don't reach out to that guy that's going through a divorce, he had a heart attack, suffering from cancer or mental depression, like what a waste. There's a story that's been written here, and I just want to tell my story, and I want to do it with no ego. But for me, Corey, honestly, when I got off the bike, I said, I'm done. I'm okay now. I honestly thought I'm okay to go in the sunset now. That sounds really sad, but it wasn't. It was like, just going to go hang out, on a mountain and go for walks and, like build Lego, do whatever I wanted to do. I was done with it. I didn't need to grab the attention anymore. And what I think has changed since that moment was like, I just, I talk to guys like Satch and I go, you know what? We can still do this stuff and not be seen as big ego guys. Like we can be amazing and we can do amazing things and do it in a way that inspires people and doesn't maybe turn people off. Because the problem with guys like me and Satch is a lot of people can't, connect with us. Like, what? You cycled 13,000 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sore knee. I can't walk. But you're the same person, brother. You're the same person as I am. I want to connect with these people. And I think guys like Satch, like one thing I admire about him is he brings it down to that level. Like he'll talk to people and he'll connect with them at that level. He's not so intimidating and oh God, I can't even connect with this guy. Those are the guys that I really respect. These personalities that bring the people in and help them, don't intimidate them. So it's a long-winded answer, but that's sort of what changed. I was done. Now I feel I'm okay to go out, and I'm going to go out again, and we'll see where the journey takes me this time. But it'll be big and fun, and hopefully a lot of people will participate.
Satch, what did you think when you were doing your large event, as it were? What were your course corrections, and did you feel that there was anything that was sort of stripped away or burned away as you were doing your event from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, I think so. I think after the event, I had confidence in myself,
Mhm.
and before the event, I didn't.
Because you'd
Fundament,
accomplished it.
I accomplished it. Fundamentally, I had accomplished something that I never thought in a million years I could do.
Mm.
I just like I never thought I could do that. I believed in myself, but believing in yourself is one thing, and then doing a thing is an entirely other thing. And then reflecting back on it, how many people we impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and then reflecting back on just meeting people while I was running across the province. All of these things were very transformational for me. It was a life-changing experience, those 22 days, 100%. And if you were to talk to anyone who's close to me, they would say I was different before those 22 days. Just my day to day, just the way I was moving around, just me as a person,
Mm-hmm.
versus after those 22 days. They could see, feel, hear a difference, and I attribute that difference to self-belief. Just believing that I'm worthy, believing that I'm capable, and proud that I was able to do something and maybe inspire a couple people along the way. So for me, that was the significant part. Now, having said that, 2 years ago, I started those kind of challenges, right? So this challenge was more, I was already kind of set up to get in there in the sense of like stripping away a lot of the things that were issues for me. Um, so like my first run I ever did was 100K, and I was actually in trauma. My mind was in a trauma state at that time. So really over that first year and second year, a friend Sean, Sean Taylor, after I got to a certain point, he was like, "Look, okay, that first year and a bit, you were just holding the line. I was just staying alive, because I was in that kind of trauma state, right?" And then really, the 22 marathons was me stepping off into the person that I am now, the coming the coming out story, so to speak,
Mhm.
becoming that in that cocoon, and then coming out as a butterfly, so to speak, and now just moving forward with that new person I've become.
Right.
Yeah, I see. I followed Satch's journey when he was doing the run, because I think I was riding.
Yeah, you
We
were.
were
Yeah, you
riding,
were.
Right.
You
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was such an interesting thing. But I honestly think Satch is cut out for this stuff. Like if someone's designed to do this, it's a guy like Satch. A guy like me, um, I like for me, I was trying to solve a problem with it, and it's taught me a lot about myself. It's taught me a lot about ego and doing things for the right reason. And I want to help people, and I want to tell my story. But like Satch to me reminds me of a guy that's just like the discipline, those qualities that you need to run across Canada, or to run the 20 marathons, and like, good for you, Satch. Like you you really do speak to it in an authentic way, and you believe in it. Like that's the feeling I got from you following the marathons. It's just like you don't say it from a place that's not truthful within you. Like you honestly live and walk, and when you get somebody whose words align with action, it's very inspiring. I hate people that do a lot of this but don't back it
Mhm.
up, and I'm surrounded by it. So that was the big change watching your journey, Satch. It's like you validated a lot of that. It's like, yeah, that philosophy that I spoke, that I repeated over and over. I went out and I showed it, and I did it. So to me, yeah, good for you, man. Like you
Thanks,
put
man.
your words and your actions out there, and you delivered. So good job.
Appreciate you,
Matt,
man. Thank you.
Matt, I'd love to touch base on one more thing here before we sort of talk about your charities and the kids here, and look at wrapping up a little bit. I've been loving this conversation, by the way. I don't want it to end, but I've got something written down here. Obviously, Nicole is your wife, correct?
Yes, she's my wife today. I can tell you, when I was on my rock bottom, she just about wasn't my wife.
I think we've all been there. I think my wife would absolutely say that as well. And actually, that's the very important thing that I'd like to talk about. Is obviously you're saying how Nicole was on, with you with your events, and you were kind of maybe not as nice to her as you could have been, but she was there supporting you. Obviously, I'm not going to ask a simple question of how important was that support, because obviously it was important. But I'm more interested in, how did you, when you looked back on it, how was her support different than what you thought it was going to be when you started? Like, what was the benefit that she gave you, or the support that she gave you, that you didn't expect, that you only realized at the end of those events was actually giving you power and support?
Well, uh, this is a kind of a tough question to answer, because it's very emotional. I have to keep myself in check here, because I can have some teary eyes here pretty quick. But at the end of the day, and you said it earlier, Corey, about the way life treats you, When I was at my counselor, I said, I'm damaging all these relationships, including my marriage, and I'm at the top of this mountain. And he asked me this question. He says, "Well, who do you want to be at the top of the mountain with?" Well, the ego side of me, I want to be that 25-year-old guy again. Right? That's what I think I miss. And he says, "Well, let me tell you something. You're at the top of the mountain looking at a view, and the person you want to be standing with is the person that knows how hard it was to get there." And I think that at the end of the day, when I rode across Canada, it was life, crammed into 100 days.
Mm.
It's not the fact that she was there on day 90 putting liniment on my ass because it was, cut from the seat. It was the fact that she was there when I was suffering from mental depression and I couldn't pick myself up. So that's and I've never really said that before, but it's not support through the event, it's support in life. And the type of things that we do, folks like me and Satch, we just represent life a certain way, and everybody uses the word support, but it's so much more. It's like I can't tell you. It's just a few words from her that kind of settles me. It's like I've had nothing but problems with the car I'm having. It's going to be all right, Matt. Trust me. Nobody else could say that to me. I'd say, fuck off. Like, it's not going to be all right. But when she says it, and that's what I learned. I learned that on the trip. Yeah, I can say the easy thing is I couldn't have done it without her. Yeah, no doubt I couldn't have done it without her. But it's so much more than that. It's like, find that person in your life. And I've screwed up. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. But now, yeah, you want that person who understands the journey to see the view when you're 7 years old. It doesn't make any sense for you not to be standing beside the person who got you there, because nobody else would understand it. Nobody. And that's my sacred learning.
That's awesome, man.
Such, how did you find, because obviously I know who your support was, or at least your visible support was during your journey. But what are your thoughts listening to Matt here? Were they very similar to yours?
Probably not. And I'll just be honest about that, because Julie and I were just kind of started dating at the time. So we hadn't been in a relationship for an extended period of time.
That's a hell of a first date, buddy.
Yeah. So there were a lot of challenges to overcome throughout those 22 days, and many of which weren't the running, right? And so I had to, and look, a lot of the learning I've been having from a relationship perspective has been after those 22 days, because I've needed time to reflect and process and understand how I am as a person. And for me, I'm so driven and so like single track and single minded that I can push people away, and it happens often. And I get to a point, and I'm just gonna be full disclosure, I get to a point where I say to myself, I don't need anybody. This is all me. Nobody can touch me. You get to, because and it's so funny that we're talking about Julia. She sent me a reel this morning of I can't remember the person's name. It's some big Australian trainer guy, who was talking about what I'm going to say right now. And I already kind of understand this. In that time, those 22 days, my ego was in full effect, because it's a tool for me. I had to really put the ego at the forefront so that I can execute against what I was trying to do. And then afterwards, then I can put that back in its sheath, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So for me, I was that guy. So if you even see, if you guys watch boxing or anything like that, Mike Tyson, when he did his one sort of exhibition fight, he was training, guy's in his 50s. But when he was in that sort of training mode, the old Mike Tyson came out, the scary one. So for me, that's how I identify or utilize my ego as a weapon, so I can activate it at certain moments and then put it away at certain times. Now, having said that, it was a challenge for those 22 days, because Julia didn't quite understand me, and I didn't understand her, and I didn't want anything stopping me or slowing me down. So that can present a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah.
So, but having said that, now with full reflection, I'm really happy that she was there. And after listening to what you just said, Matt, I'm really happy that she was there, because really there was only one person that saw all of the struggle I was going through. Man, I was emotional. I was beat up. I was there were days I was crying. Like it was a lot, right? And I wasn't getting a ton of sleep. I was getting maybe 5 hours a night. And again, those were adding to the stressors. But I'm so happy that she was there, because I had someone that was supporting me, even despite how much of an asshole I was during those 22 days. And but it was a good learning lesson for me. So for my next challenge, she won't have to do anything.
There
I'm going
you
to make
go.
sure I'm going to
There you
make sure
go.
she doesn't have to support in the capacity that I was asking her to. I just want her to be my girlfriend who's traveling with me if she wants to, because
Yeah.
anyway, so I hope that answers the
Yeah, I
the
think so.
question.
And obviously I haven't cycled across Canada or handstands across the island or anything like that myself, but I know I have my wife in my life, and when I think of things like support, when I look back on in some of my darker times and things like that, because I've had my own struggles, and she's been there for literally all of them. And it wasn't until I reflected back on the things that I thought that she was doing and the support that she was providing that I realized that wasn't it. It wasn't the big things that I saw her doing and taking care of the kids and running around and trying to do this and trying to do that. For me, the real support when I look back on it was the very small things that she made count. And it was
Yeah.
so impactful when I realized that it wasn't these grandiose things that she was trying to do. It was the almost mundane things that really made it count, because it was coming from her, that were the most impactful for me. And when I look back on it, provided the most support for me. So it was just something interesting, because obviously I wasn't doing an event. It wasn't something that happened, but the support, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have
I
gotten
got a
through
question on
those.
that. So the mundane thing. So can you give me an example of one thing that is mundane that you felt was like, oh man, that was is the question making sense? I
Yeah.
hope.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's an interesting question, because you think I would immediately have an example for that. But it was something as simple as I'm sitting in the dark and I do not have the capacity to engage with anybody. I'm literally physically separated from my family, because the capacity that I have was eaten up by the workday. And she simply comes in, she doesn't ask if I want anything, and she hands me a little plate of food. And then she walks away. She
Mhm.
doesn't try to fix me. She doesn't try to engage me. She absolutely wants me out of that room. She wants to flick the light on. She wants to ask me what's wrong. But she comes in, she gives me a little plate of food, and then she leaves. And now obviously it's up to me, and there's a long journey, and we're much better. It's up for me to get out of that room. But that support, that small quote unquote mundane thing, where she didn't come in and say, hey, you know what, I've cleared your schedule, don't worry about it, I'm going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to clean the house, and I'm going to make sure the kids get to school and all the rest of it. It was the small things that with that were really important to me, if that answers your
Yeah.
question.
No, it does. And what that tells me in that sort of that story you mentioned, at least the nugget that I take out of that, and why I think you might value that a great deal, is she understood what you needed in the moment, and
Even when I didn't.
when you didn't. So that is pretty legit, man. To have someone understand, okay, this is kind of what you need right now. I'm gonna give that to you. I mean, that's cool. So thank you for sharing that, man.
Yeah, here's something I'll say about your spouse, your partner, the people that you surround yourself with, especially if you're going to take a journey like I took, or what Satch is planning to take. Just look at the person and say, can this person accept me when I treat them the worst? And Nicole did.
Mhm.
She had not one good day out there. She had to lug luggage upstairs, lug luggage back down the stairs because I couldn't walk. And all the while she heard me bitching and moaning about the motel, how dirty it was. and it was her fault that we were staying at that place. Had nothing to do with her choice. There's only one place to stay in that town, but at that point I needed to blame somebody, and she took it for 100 days. And so when you ask what that person does, the mundane stuff, they they take you at your worst. And I'll tell you, when you're, whether it's life or it's an endurance event like the things that we do, they need to take you at your worst, because you will be your worst. There's an ugly person within all of us. You have a bad day at work, guess what? Shut up. You have a bad day on the run, guess what? Shut up. You become a very angry, mean person sometimes. And that person, when you're with the right person, says, I understand. That doesn't mean they're going to take it. It doesn't mean that they should take it. What I'm saying is they know in that moment, I get it. I understand why you're in a bad space. And that was true for Nicole even when I was suffering from depression. She knew I was suffering, and she wasn't going to push the boundaries. She was there to fight with me. And even on the days that I was really bad, like just not a very good person to be around. And that's coming back to your original question, Corey, about, your learnings about important people in your life. And Satch made a good point about Julie. You described your ego and how you used it. And I just want to point something out. There is good ego, and Satch is spot on. It's a shield, and you need to put that shield on once in a while. That is the I'm 7 foot tall F you world. I'm going to go out and smash this. That ego is fine. And you brought that up, Satch. You use it as your sword. Spot on. There is good ego and there's bad ego, and I think that we as humans need to recognize the two, leverage the one, and chuck the other one out the window if you can.
It's a matter of understanding yourself, right? And how your ego manifests. And I understand how mine does. Now I do. So I just try to use it as a scalpel or a tool or a sword or whatever you want to call it, to help me move in a direction that that allows me to do things that I never thought possible. And you know what, man, it's perhaps there is a benefit to significant amounts of trauma if you're able to turn it in a direction that helps yourself and others around you. Because, I think, without having some of my experiences throughout life, probably I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. And set goals and plans to do the things that I plan to do and continue to do probably for the rest of my life, knock on wood. But I think, if someone has had some significant types of traumas in your life, it's not over, man. You just have to find a way to process those things and perhaps find ways to use those things to your advantage as a tool to help you overcome things and perhaps even help others while you're doing it.
Matt, I'd love to switch gears here a little bit, and I want to touch base on something that is super important that we haven't really. You've touched base on a little bit on it. You've mentioned the children's charities that you were riding for and running for and things like that. I want you to sort of, what made you decide that it was going to be children's charities? Was it just something that you felt was altruistic and you should, or was there a particular passion you had for those?
It was like going out on dates. We talked to different charities, and we walked into this particular one that focused more on children. And there's just a quality about kids. I don't have any kids of my own. I've got little people in my world, but I don't have my own kid, any of my own kids. But I just feel that I guess it's their vulnerability when they're suffering. It's like, I don't know, it rips your heart out, it grabs me. And in this particular case, we're talking about kids that would never get the experience of riding a bike, something we take for granted every day. And I just said, you know, and it's funny because when I was riding across Canada, you know, after day 30, I was just like, I hate this. Like I want to throw this bike into the ditch. I was so sore and beaten up. And then I just thought to myself, there are kids out there that would kill to have this experience. And when I saw that little boy in Montreal or any of the other hundreds of kids I got to meet, your heart breaks. And this next charity, man, I'll tell you, we're going to be making some announcements soon, but it is a charity that, I mean, we went and visited the compound, and yeah, I cried. You can't help it. I mean, this is helping kids avoid taking their own lives, and I'm not talking teenagers. I'm talking about young kids that just, you know, their world's been destroyed. So yeah, kids are just, you know, they're up there with pets. I mean, it's like you want to help the vulnerable, and there's so many good causes out there, fighting for cancer, fighting for women's shelters, poverty. But you got to pick you got to pick the connection that resonates with you, because on your worst days, you're really going to have to feel it's worth it, because this shit isn't easy. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that I wasn't familiar with the charity You Can Ride Too, until you sent me that link, and I was looking at it, and I honestly, that's right up there for me. Can you describe just a tiny bit about that, and how it was meaningful to you and how your event assisted them?
Well, we turned the volume up on that charity from a 2 to a 10. I mean, they had 5 times their single biggest donation through the event. 5 times we broke the record. Their social media quadrupled or tripled or quadrupled. They're connected to a lot more businesses now. You Can Ride Too was spoken to the media in every one of the provinces and territories we've crossed. I just got a text from the lady there that works there, Emily. She said, you know, we walk. They're like the Edmonton Oilers now. They have a little bit of cockiness to them because they're a recognized charity doing great things, all built off the backs of volunteers. The lady that founded it did it out of her own heart to help these kids, and these kids come in on Bike Fit Day, Try a Bike Day, and their arms are flapping like the excitement just being around a bike. You're gonna cry as soon as you walk into that place, and then you see them actually get on the bike, and it's like, it's we all talk about transformation as adults. I describe transformation as a baby letting go of the table and taking its first step. In that one moment, the world has changed completely and permanently. And we as adults forget about that courage, the courage it takes to let go of the table. Those kids are letting go of the table when they get on that bike. Their world is completely and permanently changed in that one instant when they're on that bike. Transformation is extremely powerful, but it's like world peace. It's a nice thought, but very difficult to achieve. So to see it in action, it's like, it'll blow your mind.
That's awesome. And before we go around the table here and finish up, Matt, you mentioned obviously your next event that's coming up. Can you give us a little bit of at least for our listeners, a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, I don't know if, am I allowed to say the charity?
Not yet. No.
Not yet. She said not yet.
Don't say the charity. Just what's your event?
Oh, well, what we're going to do, and I'm going to be talking to Satch about this, but I'm going to go across Canada again, but I'm going to do it in a way that's bigger in some ways and more subdued in others. The idea of riding 150 kilometers for 100 days straight, I'll be very honest with you. I lost a lot of potential to reach people and impact the charity because I was so busy cycling from one town to the next, just pushing myself to the absolute limit. So now we're going to go across Canada, but instead of just cycling from one spot to the next, I'm going to cycle, say 150 kilometers, and I'm going to get off my bike and I'm going to do something in 10 of these major centers. So maybe I run a half marathon, maybe I do 10K of rowing, maybe I do rucking, maybe I so that I can connect with the people. And I want to focus on promoting what I'm calling, for lack of a better term right now, endurance warriors, because we're fighting for these little people. And I look at the little people as warriors, right? So I want to highlight people. It's not just about Matt Devine. There's amazing stories. There's guys like Satch out there. Okay, he's in the rarefied air of somebody that's going to run, hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers. Maybe the next person we promote is someone who was a survivor of cancer. Maybe the next person we promote, and each one of these people are going to be an endurance warrior telling a story, and each story is going to connect with a different demographic, part of the demographic community out there. So yeah, I'm doing my thing across Canada, but I'm stopping, and Satch is going to take the baton that day, and he's going to run 50 people out or 100 people out, however many people we can get out there, and we're going to promote each other, and we're going to tell each other's stories, because not everybody understands 13,000 kilometers on a bike, but maybe they understand a guy like Satch, and I want to run 10K with him.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be there. I'm going to ride in. I'm going to pass the baton, and we're going to have these ambassadors across Canada. And if Satch is on the road, well, I'll meet up with him. maybe,
Hey man,
maybe we.
whatever.
Maybe,
Hey, listen, I'm down to help wherever, man. So you just hit me up, and if it works, we work and make it happen.
And we're gonna travel so many kilometers, but more importantly, we're gonna put in hours of work. And here's where it really makes sense to people. If you're a 50-year-old single mother suffering from some condition, and you're looking at me and you're saying, how do I take the first step? We're going to give them that path. If you're not a cyclist, if you're not a runner, when I come into your town, maybe we do yoga, and I will get a yoga expert in that area to conduct a workshop for us, so people can come out and engage in all sorts of different levels of endurance, fitness, but they're taking their first step forward. And for every hour we work, I'm going to try to get $1 raise for this charity.
Nice.
Awesome.
Love it. Love it. Matt, how do people reach out to you if they want to support you, which I absolutely believe they will? How do they reach you? I know we talked about social media and stuff like that, but why don't you let us know?
Yeah, so for now, it's Devine Transformation on Instagram. We're putting the event website together, and I'm starting to line up conversations with people like Satch to design it and get the map of the event, the schedule of the event put together. There's going to be some big announcements coming out in the next couple of weeks about the event, about the entity we're creating. We're going to be releasing the documentaries that were created on the ride. But for now, Devine Transformation, and I'll answer all questions. And if anybody out there wants to be an ambassador, thinks they have a really good story that will help inspire people, I want to share that story, and we're going to share that story, and we're going to inspire a lot of people to become these endurance warriors in their own space. And we're going to change the way people think about themselves and charity.
Awesome. I love it. Hit Matt up in his DM, give him a follow, and give him a comment. Let him know that what he's doing matters. I'll go around the table here. Satch, thoughts?
Hey man, thanks Matt for doing this, being our first guest on our podcast, and thanks for doing what you're doing, man. I really do appreciate it. It does inspire me too, and for me, I need to be around people like you and see what people like you are doing. It fuels me. So keep doing what you're doing, and if I can support or help in any way, man, I'm always there.
Well, Satch, I want to say this to you. You're probably going to take it. I've taken it this high. You're going to take it up to this level. And I am very sincere when I say that if there is a person out there like yourself doing these great things, I'm starting to understand how important it is and how good it makes me feel to talk about them now, to tell their story, to spread the love. What you're going to go after here in the next several years is going to be amazing. I'm going to be one of your supporters. I'm sure I'll be on the side of the road with you. But I want to tell your story, and I love this, what you guys are doing. And I'll tell you why I love it, because I'm seeing it at its infancy. I'm seeing the seed in the soil. I'm not talking to Joe Rogan right now, but I'm talking to the next Joe Rogan. So keep doing what you're doing. Talk about men's mental health. Talk about fitness. Please keep doing that. It's so important. And I'd love to come back. Corey, you've got a good style about you. I don't know. You seem to have a really good, I don't know how to say it, but you're cut out for this. I'll say that.
It's almost like I interview people for a living.
Yeah, you're good, man.
Well, Matt, I appreciate that. And on behalf of myself and the listeners, man, my life's better for having you in it. And I appreciate you taking us along on this journey. I think we've kind of just touched base on some of the stuff that's super important. We'd love to have you back on at any point. And obviously, as your journey's getting closer, we'd love to have you on and afterwards. But very, very, very much appreciate it. I hate I have to conclude this at an hour and a half, but please let us know. From myself and such, to all our listeners, and from Matt, we thank you again for joining us on our journey today.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys next week. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.